Welcome. This time, we'll explore what truly took place behind the closed doors of brothels in the Viking Age. Far from the tales of passion, these were places of bargaining, debt, and survival wrapped in candlelight and shadow. Let's begin. Since I want to tell you everything about brothels in the days when Vikings still terrorized the coasts of Europe, it makes sense to begin with them. After all, they were among the most reliable suppliers of women to such houses, and almost never by choice. And this time, you might as well imagine that it is you. Yes. You are the one dragged here, sold to the house, still smelling faintly of smoke and sea salt, a little unsteady on your feet after the chaos outside. The door shuts behind you with a soft, final sound, not a creak, not a slam, but the weary sigh of wood that has closed too many times on the same kind of night. The air inside is warmer than you expect, but it is a thick, oily warmth, heavy with the smell of tallow candles and sweat. It clings. Even your breath feels different here, as though it has been bought and is being measured. No one asks your name. In fact, it is almost as if having a name would be inconvenient. Names are for people who might leave, who might be missed. Here you are assessed instead, eyes running over you from boots to hair, noting shape, posture, signs of strength or weakness. Some of the faces around you carry a glint of curiosity, others, something like mockery. Your silence is not a problem. In fact, it suits them. New arrivals are always quiet. The first, welcome, comes not in words, but in the way you are pushed toward a low, square-shouldered woman with her hair pinned into a knot so tight it pulls her face into sharper lines. She is the mistress of the house. Her gaze is swift and cutting, like a knife slicing through rope. She circles you without moving her feet, her eyes doing all the walking, pausing at your hands, your shoulders, your teeth. Not unlike a horse trader, she makes her judgment silently, then gives the smallest nod. Beside her stands a guard, broad, quiet, with one hand resting lazily on the hilt of a short knife. It is not a threat so much as a reminder. There is nowhere to run, and no good reason to try. His presence hums in the air like a hidden string, taut but not yet plucked. You are shown a table, where a heel of black bread waits for you, dense enough to pound in a nail, and a bowl of thin stew. The steam is fragrant with onions and a bone that must have been boiled for the better part of a day. The liquid tastes of warmth more than meat. Someone at the far end of the table chuckles and says, "For strength." And you realize this food is not a kindness. It is an investment. And like all investments here, it will be tallied against your debt. The mistress speaks at last, her voice low but carrying. The rules are simple. Each night brings silver to her hand, and in exchange you stay alive until morning. Sometimes it is not silver, furs, knives, a cask of ale, a pot of honey. All is accepted, but all is counted. The guard at the door ensures that nothing, and no one, leaves without settling accounts. Your first client comes before you finish the bread. His step is steady, his face unreadable except for the certainty in his eyes, the look of a man collecting something he has already paid for. Behind him, the room murmurs and shifts, coins change hands, ale sloshes into cups, and the shadows lean closer to listen. Somewhere above you, the floorboards groan under the weight of other footsteps, other beginnings. The smoke from the candles thickens, rolling in slow waves toward the rafters, and you begin to understand the rhythm here. Not hours or bells, but the opening and closing of doors, the rustle of cloth, the scrape of coins across wood. This is only the first night. And yet already, in the small quiet between knocks on the door, you can feel the lesson pressing in on you. To survive here, you will have to learn the art of not noticing everything at once. There are no walls here, not the kind that close you in and keep others out. Instead, the house is stitched together with curtains, heavy enough to hide shapes, but thin enough to let every sound bleed through. The cloth smells faintly of smoke, skin, and the damp wool it used to be before someone repurposed it. In the dim candlelight, the fabric shivers when someone walks past, brushing against it with a careless elbow or the edge of a boot. Behind the curtain in front of you, a voice hums low, almost tuneless, then breaks into a quiet laugh. On the other side, there's a different sound entirely, the thud of a cup on a wooden floor, a murmur that rises and falls like the tide. You are not meant to see them, but you cannot avoid hearing them. Here, privacy is an idea you can hear dissolving in the air. The space is narrow, too narrow for pacing. You sit on the edge of the bed, a low frame with ropes under the mattress that creak when you shift your weight. Every movement is audible, not only to you, but to the person behind the next curtain. If they turn over, you know. If they clear their throat, you know. If they whisper a price or a name, you know. And they, in turn, know you. Coins clink somewhere to your left, followed by the soft scrape of metal on wood. It's the guard again, counting, his breathing slow and unhurried. He doesn't need to look inside. He knows exactly how long each transaction should take. His presence is the house's clock. When his steps stop, it means the next one is already waiting. The air grows heavier as the night deepens. The small space traps the warmth of bodies, ale-sour breath, the scent of candle grease melting in shallow dishes. There is nowhere for it to go, so it settles in your clothes, in your hair, under your skin. Each inhalation feels like swallowing the day's history, and not just yours. A shadow moves past the bottom of the curtain, bare feet gliding over the floorboards, then another pair, heavier, boots still on. Somewhere in the distance, a chair tips over, drawing a brief burst of laughter before fading into the constant hum. The curtain before you stirs again, not from wind, but from the hand that parts it just enough to look in. A quick, practiced glance, and then it falls back into place. You are reminded that here, there is no such thing as being unseen. Even in the pause between one client and the next, the house keeps watch. And outside, in the narrow hallway, someone begins to knock on the next door. Not loud, not urgent, just enough to tell you that time is moving, and there are others waiting. The curtain closes behind the last set of footsteps, and the air still holds the warmth they left behind. It is never more than a few breaths before the next one comes. This is not a place where anyone lingers without a price. The house runs on minutes, and those minutes are weighed like grain, counted, measured, and sold. The sound comes first, the faint clink of silver being tipped from a pouch into a small brass scale. It's an old scale, scratched from years of use, the kind that has weighed more coins than a market stall. The guard crouches by it, balancing the tiny weights, his thumb brushing the edge of the pan to make sure the measure is exact. You can hear the whisper of metal on metal, the sharp little clicks as he adjusts them. It is the sound of time being bought. No one here pays for longing. That is a luxury for people in songs and stories. What is bought here is the right to occupy a space with you for an agreed span, not a heartbeat more. The guard knows exactly how long a coin will stretch. For 2 silver pieces, perhaps enough to take off boots and speak a few words before the candle burns down another inch. For more, a longer sit, slower movements, a second cup of ale if there is any left. You have learned to hear the rhythms. The quick exchange of silver means a hurried visit, perhaps just the grasp of a hand or the press of breath into your neck before they are gone. A heavier purse means more waiting, more time spent watching the flame bend in the draft from the curtain, more listening to them talk about things you will not remember tomorrow. The time is theirs. Everything else is just a frame around it. The mistress has her own way of marking the minutes. Her chair is set in the corner of the main room, where she can see both the door and the stairs. When a new client comes in, she tilts her head, calculating. Her eyes measure not beauty, but efficiency, Who can be sent where, for how long, and how much it will earn her before the lamps need trimming. Sometimes she calls out a number without looking up, the way a cook might call for another sack of flour. There is a strange stillness in knowing your worth can be stacked on a table in coins. You watch it happen, the purse opened, the coins counted, the nod given. And then the briefest of gestures toward you, like passing a cup. The client follows the guard through the narrow hall, ducking under the low beam where the candles burn hotter. The coins remain with the mistress, and you remain with the minutes they have bought. When silver is short, other payments appear. You have seen furs traded in winter, fine enough to line a cloak. A carved knife handle, still smelling of resin. A small cask of ale that made its way around the house in mugs, leaving foam on every lip. Sometimes the payment is stranger, a basket of dried fish, a string of beads, even a tiny bronze brooch in the shape of a bird. The mistress always accepts, but the value is converted in her mind back into time. No matter what changes hands, the measure stays the same, how many minutes it buys in the house. Some clients use every moment they have purchased. Others spend much of it in silence, sitting on the edge of the bed, drinking from the cup you hand them. There is no rule that says the time must be filled with movement. Sometimes it is just a kind of waiting together, until the guard outside clears his throat, a small, deliberate sound that means the minutes are gone. You learn that the silver does not simply buy access. It also buys the right to ignore the world outside the curtain. A man who works on the docks may forget, for a short while, the frozen ropes and the sting of salt water on his skin. A trader may set aside the weight of ledgers. But the forgetting is brief. It lasts only as long as the coins last, and when the guard steps inside, it ends with the same quiet finality as a door closing. Sometimes you catch yourself listening for the coins before you even see the client. The weight of them, the way they strike the pan, tells you more than their face ever could. A heavy sound means the night will stretch. A light sound means you will still have the better part of the candle left when they go. The house hums with this exchange, silver for minutes, minutes for something that isn't quite desire. You begin to understand that in here, time is more intimate than touch. And the touch, when it happens, is only another way to keep the minutes moving. Outside your curtain, the guard's boots scrape across the floor. Somewhere in the room beyond, a laugh rings out, low and fleeting. Another purse is opened. Another measure taken. And another set of minutes begins to burn away. It begins with the sound of boots on the dock, not here, not yet, but close enough that the house can feel it. The ships have come in. You can almost smell them before you see anyone. Salt, tar, and wet will carried in on the wind that slips through the gaps in the shutters. The mistress's gaze sharpens. The guard shifts his weight, knowing the night will be long. The first knock comes early, before the last candle from the previous hour has burned down. It is followed by another, and another. The hallway fills with bodies, leaning against the walls, muttering in low voices, exchanging coins from one palm to another. The air outside your curtain thickens with their breath. When the guard moves the curtain aside, there is no pause for introductions. The man steps in, closes the space between you with a sailor's certainty, and the minutes start ticking. There is a weight to these encounters when they come one after the other, not heavier, just stacked. You begin to lose track of the order. One face blends into the next, one set of hands into another, one smell of ale and sea brine into the one before. Between them, there is hardly time to sit. A few sips of water, a quick pull of the blanket straight, a glance toward the door before the curtain parts again. The candle hardly has time to steady its flame before another shadow fills the room. The guard no longer needs to announce them. The rhythm is too fast. You notice small differences only because they repeat. One has a cough that rattles in his chest. Another wears a belt knife he never removes. Another chews dried fish slowly as he talks. Each detail hangs in the air for a moment before it is swept away by the next set of footsteps. Outside, the voices rise and fall. Someone laughs too loudly. Someone sings a line of a song and forgets the rest. Coins are counted again, but faster now, as if even the silver knows it must move quickly. The mistress sits forward in her chair, eyes darting from the guard to the line at the door. Every knock is answered, every purse opened. You feel the hours stretch, not as a single line, but as a chain of small, repeating moments. The curtain opens, it closes. A body enters, a body leaves. The bed ropes creak, the floorboards groan, the candle burns lower. The air grows thicker, the smell sharper, sweat, tallow, wool, and the faint, sour trace of spilled ale that will be sticky underfoot by morning. Some men speak. Others say nothing. A few linger at the end of their minutes, staring at you as if deciding whether to spend another coin. Most do not. They step out, and another steps in, like waves on a shore, never the same water, always the same pull. By the time the line begins to shorten, the candle is a small pool of wax, trembling with every movement of the curtain. The guard's eyes are heavy-lidded but alert, still counting the steps, still measuring the minutes. When the last one leaves, the room feels strange. Too quiet. The air is still warm, but the pressure has gone. The curtain hangs motionless, the noises in the hallway fading into the scrape of chairs and the clink of coins being gathered up. Somewhere downstairs, the mistress laughs, not loud, not warm, but with the satisfaction of a night's work done. And you, sitting in the hollow left by all those footsteps, can feel the difference between an ordinary night and one when the ships came in. It is the one thing that never leaves you. Even with the curtain drawn and no one inside the room, it waits in the air, patient and unchanging. The smell of the brothel is its own creature, stitched together from tallow, sweat, ale, and smoke, breathing in time with the house. The tallow comes first. The candles are cheap, thick, and pale, their fat melting into shallow pools that give off a faint animal tang. The wax drips in slow beads, leaving streaks on the wooden holders, a scent that clings to your fingertips when you pinch the wick. It hides in your hair, even when you think you have washed it out. Then there is the ale, always slightly sour, always warm from the nearness of the fire. It seeps into the floorboards when spilled, and no scrubbing can remove it. In the evenings, when mugs are passed from hand to hand, the smell deepens, filling the air with a sweetness just this side of rotten. Sweat is the most changeable of them all, shifting with each body that moves through the house. It is sharp in summer, heavy in winter, and always mixed with a faint musk of wool and damp leather. It soaks into sheets, curtains, the ropes under the beds. No amount of airing chases it away. And always, above it all, the smoke. The hearth is never cold. Logs burn low all day and night, sending a thin haze curling up toward the rafters. The smoke softens the sharper smells, but it also carries them, as if the house itself is exhaling what it holds. Sometimes it is wood smoke alone, sometimes there is the darker, acrid bite of something burned too long. You notice how the smell changes through the night. At the start, it is lighter, with more wood and ale. As the hours pass, it thickens, sweat rising, candles melting faster, the air becoming warmer, heavier. By dawn, it has the weight of a closed fist, pressing down, coating your tongue. It clings to you when you leave the room, and even more when you step outside into the early morning air. The street smells different, damp stone, sea wind, market fish, but the brothel follows you like a shadow. You smell it in the folds of your dress, in the strands of your hair, in the hollow between your collarbone and your throat. Others can smell it too. Some try to mask it with herbs, rubbing crushed leaves into their skin before bed. Others dab honey water on their wrists, or hang their clothes near the fire in hopes the smoke will change its shape. It never works. The brothel scent is stronger than rosemary, stronger than mint. It is the smell of heat, of silver changing hands, of nights that never fully end. It is the house's mark, more lasting than bruises, more binding than debt. And no matter how many years pass, there are mornings when you wake and catch the faintest trace of it again, and know exactly where you are. The smell of the brothel leads you to the common room, where the tables are scarred from years of elbows and spilled ale. Food is never far away here, though it is not the kind to linger over. Meals are taken quickly, between knocks on the door, eaten with one hand while the other keeps the blanket from slipping off a shoulder. Bread comes first, black, dense, and stale enough to resist the knife. You have to press hard to cut it, and even then the slice falls uneven, the crust flaking onto the table. Sometimes it is softened in ale, sometimes in the thin stew kept warm near the hearth. The stew is more water than meat, but the heat of it is enough to warm fingers chilled by the night. The ale is served in clay mugs, the rims chipped smooth from years of use. It is never cold. The fire by the wall sees to that, keeping the liquid just warm enough to bring out its sour edge. On quieter nights, a second cup might be offered. On busy nights, you drink only enough to wash down the bread before the guard's boots find you again. Meat is rare, appearing mostly after ships bring fresh supplies. A slice of salted fish might be passed around, each person taking a bite before handing it on. A haunch of something roasted is more likely to be reserved for the mistress and her favored guests. You learn not to expect it. Sometimes there is honeyed milk, thick and sweet, served in small bowls. It leaves a film on your tongue that lingers long after, mixing with the other tastes of the night. On feast days or when the house has done particularly well, dried fruits might appear: figs, raisins, slices of apple baked until soft. These are eaten quickly, before they can disappear into someone else's hand. The table is a quiet place only in the early afternoon, when most are sleeping. Then, the bread sits untouched, the mugs are empty, and the stew rests in the pot, its surface dull and still. But by evening, the table comes alive, not with conversation, but with the sounds of eating, the scrape of spoons, the crunch of crust, the swallow of ale. You never forget that this food is part of the bargain. It is paid for in advance, the cost buried in the debt you owe the house. Every mouthful is another coin you have not yet earned back. And when you rise from the table, wiping the crumbs from your hands, the smell of tallow and smoke folds over you again. A reminder that meals here are not breaks from the night, only pauses within it. The evening meal is still on the table when the trouble starts. A mug tips first, the dull scrape of clay across wood, followed by the sudden slosh of warm ale spilling over the edge. The liquid seeps into the grooves worn into the table by years of elbows and knives. A hand moves quickly to stop it, but another hand, larger, rougher, slaps it aside. There is a pause, a breath where the air in the room seems to lean forward. Chairs shift. The scrape of boots on the floor sharpens. Two men, both already warm from drink, are locked on each other now, one clutching the other's wrist, knuckles widening. The heat in the room tilts towards something sharper. A muttered curse slips between teeth, and the voices in the corners quiet. The mistress is there before anyone calls her. She doesn't hurry, she never does, but she moves with the certainty of someone who owns the ground she walks on. Her hair is wound into a knot so tight it pulls the lines of her face upward, making her eyes look narrower, more cutting. Her skirt brushes the floor, picking up crumbs and ale drops as she passes. She stops at the table and looks down at the two men as though they were boys caught in the act of stealing from her pantry. Her voice is low, almost soft, but it travels easily over the thick air. "You know the rules," she says, not quite a question, not quite a statement. "The rules are simple. and everyone here knows them. No weapons drawn inside these walls. No debts unpaid at the door. No violence that leaves the house with less than it had before. The words are old, repeated often enough to be part of the air itself, part of the way the house breathes. They are not meant to be argued with. The guard appears at her shoulder, tall, broad, the kind of stillness that carries weight. He does not touch the men. Not yet. His hand rests casually near his belt, fingers grazing the hilt of his knife. A reminder, nothing more. The mistress does not look at him. Her eyes stay fixed on the two in front of her, holding them still in the way only she can. One of them tries to speak, his voice starting in a mutter and climbing toward defense. She cuts it off with the smallest raise of her hand. Not a threat, just a pause, but it works. The other man releases his grip, flexing his fingers as if the bones ache. Out, she says, but her chin tilts toward only one of them. There is no need to explain which. The guard steps forward, his presence filling the space between them. The chosen man hesitates, just long enough to make the decision seem like his own, then turns toward the door. The curtain sways as he passes, the sound of his boots fading into the hallway. The mistress looks at the one who remains. You pay for the ale, she says. No anger in her tone. No heat. Just the flat surface of a coin set on the table. He nods, fumbles in his pouch, and the silver meets her palm with a soft clink. She slips it into the folds of her skirt without looking. The rest of the room exhales. Chairs scrape again, spoons find their bowls, the murmur of conversation returns. The spilled ale is wiped away with a rag that smells faintly of vinegar, leaving behind a dark, damp patch in the wood. This is how it always happens. The guard may be the one to move bodies, to push someone out into the street, but it is the mistress who decides what happens next. Her word is law in here, stronger than the cities, swifter than the docksides. You have seen her handle worse. A knife drawn too quickly, a debt that stayed unpaid too long. Once, a man tried to take more than his minutes allowed. He left with nothing but the clothes he wore and a bruise that kept him from sitting straight for a week. The mistress's rules are not about kindness. They are about control. The house runs because she says it runs, and because everyone inside knows the cost of crossing her. Sometimes, late at night, you hear her in the main room, speaking to the guard in low tones. She keeps accounts in her head as much as in her ledger. Who owes what? Who can be trusted? Who is worth the trouble of keeping? She does not write down her rules. She does not have to. They are enforced in the set of her shoulders, in the slight narrowing of her eyes, in the way the room tilts toward her whenever she moves. Tonight's trouble was small. A mug spilled, a wrist grabbed, a few breaths where the air might have turned sharp. It ends with a single word from her and the scrape of coins across the table. Tomorrow, it could be something heavier, and it will end the same way. The curtain to the hall stirs again, and the guard returns alone. The night resumes its rhythm. The mistress takes her seat in the corner, where she can see the door and the stairs, her hands folded loosely in her lap. Around her, the house breathes out, steady again, as if nothing had happened at all. Silver is the language the house speaks best, but it is not the only one it understands. When the coin is scarce, and it often is, other forms of payment appear. The mistress accepts them all, but she never forgets to translate them back into time. It begins in winter, when the fishing boats return late and the market stalls are thin. A man steps inside with no purse at his belt, but under his arm is a roll of fur, thick and dark, smelling faintly of salt and animal musk. He lays it on the table before the mistress. She runs her hands over it once, twice, feeling for flaws, then nods. The fur disappears into the storage chest, and the man disappears up the stairs. His minutes are counted the same as if the silver had clinked in her palm. Knives are common, not the rough work knives from the docks, but ones with carved handles and sharp, narrow blades. Some are inlaid with bits of brass or bone, their edges catching the light from the fire. The mistress turns them over in her hands, testing their balance, asking no questions about where they came from. A good knife can buy an hour if she likes the craftsmanship. Food appears too, but it must be something that will last. A pot of honey is prized, golden, thick, the surface shimmering when the lid is lifted. It draws flies in summer, so it is kept sealed tight in the cool of the back room, brought out only in small spoonfuls. Honey buys time in generous measure, especially if the mistress is in the mood for it in her tea. Wine comes in dark green bottles, corked and sealed, sometimes with the dust of travel still clinging to the glass. The better the vintage, the longer the stay. Casks of ale are heavier currency. They are rolled into the corner by the hearth and tapped when the house is busy. On nights like those, the air is thick with the smell of yeast and smoke, and everyone's tongue grows looser. Jewelry is rarer, but it happens: a bronze brooch, a silver ring, a string of glass beads in sea green and amber. These are weighed not on the brass scale but in the mistress's eyes. She tilts her head, judging whether they are worth keeping or worth selling, and the time they buy shifts accordingly. The most unusual payments are stories in themselves. A small carved idol of a god no one in the house recognizes. A bolt of dyed cloth from a far-off market, its color as deep as spilled wine. Once, a man brought a single falcon's feather, long and perfect. It was not worth much in minutes, but the mistress kept it, tucking it into a jar behind her chair. Every object is taken, catalogued in her mind, stored away where only she knows. Some will be traded in the market, others kept for her own use, and a few, the finest, will never leave the house. But to the one who offers them, they are simply currency. For you, the goods brought in are markers of the season. Furs mean winter is here. Honey means the flowers have returned. Wine and knives mean the ships have docked again. The house changes with these trades, its shelves and chests filling and emptying, but the system never does. Whatever passes across the table, fur, blade, bottle, bead, is worth only as much as the mistress decides. And her measure, as always, is time. The first sign is usually the cough. Not the polite, hidden kind, but the deep, tearing one that rattles in the chest and leaves the ribs aching. It comes between words, between footsteps, between the minutes bought and spent. In this house, a cough is not a reason to stop. The mistress notices, of course. She notices everything. But unless the fever bends your back or takes your voice entirely, you are still sent to the rooms when the curtain lifts. A weak smile will do, a steady hand will do, even if your legs tremble as you cross the floor. There is no real rest here. You may lie down in the day, the blanket pulled over your head to block the light, but you will still hear the footsteps, the low murmur of voices, the knock that comes for you when your turn is called. The sickness settles into your bones like a second skin, heavy and warm, but the dead is heavier. Some wrap scarves around their necks to hide the flush, others dab vinegar on their skin, hoping the sharp scent will cut through the fever's heat. Ale is used as medicine as much as drink, swallowed in long gulps to numb the ache in the throat. A bit of honey stirred into warm water is a rare kindness, if someone remembers to bring it. The clients do not always notice, or if they do not care. Time here is paid for in silver or fur, not in health. A warm body is a warm body, even if the breath catches in the middle of a word. The guard does not look twice, the mistress does not ask. Work goes on. Only the truly broken are given leave, the ones who cannot rise from the bed, whose skin is slick and pale, whose eyes no longer open when the curtain moves. They are taken to the small room at the back, the one with the narrow bed and the smell of boiled herbs. The midwife goes in and out, her hands always damp, her eyes unreadable. But for the rest, the sickness becomes part of the routine. You learn to move slower, to breathe shallowly so the cough stays quiet until the door is closed. You keep a cloth tucked in your sleeve to press to your mouth when the fits come, hiding the sound behind the noise of the bed ropes creaking. When the fever finally breaks, if it breaks, you return to the rhythm without ceremony. No one remarks on it. No one needs to. The house has kept going, and so have you. And if it does not break, if the sickness deepens instead, the house will still keep going. The minutes will still be sold, the coins still counted. In here, health is just another thing traded for time. The back room is always kept locked. It is narrow, windowless, and smells different from the rest of the house, less of tallow and ale, more of damp linen and crushed herbs. When the door opens, it is only for one reason, and the sound of the latch turning draws no eyes, only lowered voices. The midwife arrives without ceremony, her presence neither announced nor hidden. She is not one of the women who work the rooms, though she is known to them all. Her hands are small but strong, her nails kept short, her hair bound in a scarf that smells faintly of rosemary. She carries a leather satchel, its straps darkened with years of use, and from it she takes the tools of her trade: cloths, bowls, herbs wrapped in scraps of linen, a small curved knife. When a woman in the house finds herself with child, it is rarely a surprise. The signs are known too well here. The misbleed, the heaviness in the body, the quiet sickness in the morning. For some, it is a thing to be hidden as long as possible. For others, it is whispered to the mistress early, in the hope of some leniency. But the mistress's interest is practical. A pregnant woman cannot work in the same way, and the house does not pay for idleness. Decisions must be made. Will the child be carried and sent elsewhere, or will it be ended before it begins? Both are spoken of without sentiment, as matters of survival. When the birth comes, it is done behind that locked door. The midwife works in silence, save for the soft instructions she gives. Breathe here, hold now, again. Her voice is steady, measured, as though the act itself were as ordinary as mending a torn hem. A pot of water steams in the corner, the heat carrying the sharp, green scent of the herbs she has crushed into it. The room is lit by a single candle, its flame bending in the draught from the hallway. Shadows move along the walls, the shape of the midwife's back, the curve of her arm lifting a cloth, the brief stillness when she leans close to listen. The woman on the bed grips the sheet, her knuckles pale, her breath coming in low, uneven bursts. Not all births are the same. Some end with the cry of a child, thin but certain, cutting through the stale air of the room. Others end in silence, the midwife's hands moving quickly, her eyes unreadable. When there is a cry, it is hushed quickly. The sound draws questions, and questions are dangerous. What happens to the children depends on many things: the season, the mistress's mood, the arrangements that have been made. Some are sent away within hours, carried in swaddling cloth to a woman in the town who takes in such infants for a price. Some are kept a little longer, hidden upstairs until the mother can walk again. A few, very few, are claimed by their fathers, though such claims are often more about pride or appearance than care. There are also the other endings, the ones spoken of only in murmurs. The midwife leaves with her satchel lighter than when she came, the candle in the back room burned low, and the bed stripped bare. The mistress does not ask for details, she does not need them. The house returns to its rhythm as though nothing has happened, the minutes still bought and sold. For the women, the memory of the back room lingers differently. Some carry it as a quiet grief, tucked away like a folded letter. Others treat it as one more transaction in a life built on them, another price paid, another debt settled. A few speak of it in jest, their voices hard, as if daring the memory to touch them. The midwife returns to the house as often as she is called. Sometimes months pass between visits, other times she is there twice in the same week. She never stays long. Her hands are always clean when she leaves, her scarf always carrying the faint scent of herbs, as if to mark the boundary between her work and the rest of the world. In the common room, the back door clicks shut, and the sound is quickly swallowed by the murmur of voices and the scrape of mugs on wood. Upstairs, the bed in the back room cools. The herbs in the pot lose their steam. The candle burns out, leaving only the dark. Life in the house continues, the way it always does. But for those who have been in that room, the memory of its stillness, its locked door, and the midwife's quiet hands remains, a part of the house that never truly leaves, even when the door stays closed. The guards are part of the house in the same way the beams in the ceiling or the ropes under the beds are. You might stop noticing them after a while, but you are always aware they are there. One stands at the main door, his back to the street, as though the whole town beyond it is something he must keep out. The other waits deeper inside, at the bend of the upstairs hallway, close enough to hear every curtain move, every footstep pause too long outside a room. They are not in uniform. There is no need for that. Their presence is marked instead by the way they carry themselves, heavy boots planted wide, arms folded or resting lazily near a belt knife. One has a scar running from jaw to collarbone, the pale seam catching the candlelight when he turns. The other has hands so large the coins he counts seem almost like children's toys in his palm. To the clients, they are a silent reminder. The rules are enforced by the mistress, but it is the guards who make those rules into something you can feel in your bones. A glance from them can quicken a man's step toward the door, or slow it to a halt. They do not shout. They do not need to. The sound of their boots moving across the floor is often enough to make a decision for you. They are the house's clocks as much as its walls. They measure the minutes without looking at a candle or a scale. When your time is up, they know, by instinct, by experience, by the sound of the room settling after a voice goes quiet. One might clear his throat outside the curtain, a small sound that says enough now. Another might let the silence stretch for a heartbeat before stepping inside, parting the curtain just enough to catch the client's eye. Sometimes, they are protectors. You have seen them step between a woman and a client whose voice has gone sharp, whose hand has lifted too quickly. You have seen them catch a drunk by the collar before he can stumble into the wrong room. In winter they might walk someone home, not out of kindness, but because the mistress says so. Keeping her workers alive is as much their duty as keeping trouble outside. But the line between protector and threat is thin, and in this house it is not always clear which side you stand on. The same hand that hauls a troublemaker into the street can also pin you against the wall if you are in the way. A guard in a bad mood can be as dangerous as a client in the wrong one. You learn to read them, the set of their jaw, the tilt of their shoulders, to know which nights are safe to ask for a favor and which are better spent keeping your head down. They are paid in silver, in ale, and in the quiet privileges that come with seeing everything. And they do see everything. Who comes in with a heavy purse and leaves lighter? Who pays in coin? Who pays in goods? Who tries to slip out without paying at all? They see who favors whom, which women laugh easily and which keep their eyes on the floor. They see when someone is working through sickness, when the midwife's visits are more frequent, when the mistress locks her ledger drawer. The guards are not gossipers. They hold what they see like coins kept in a closed fist. But they trade in their knowledge when it suits them, a whispered warning to the mistress, a muttered aside to the other guard when the hall is quiet. Information is another form of currency in this house, and they have plenty of it. On busy nights, when the ships have come in and the line outside the door snakes down the street, the guards move constantly. One at the door, ushering the next man inside. one in the hallway, stepping aside just enough to let bodies pass but never enough to disappear from sight. The air around them is warm with movement and the faint tang of the steel they carry. On quiet nights, they are still there. The one at the door might lean against the frame, watching the street with half-lidded eyes, his breath making small clouds in the winter air. The one upstairs might sit on a low stool, sharpening his knife in long, slow strokes, the rasp of the blade against the wet stone keeping time with the creak of the building settling. There are moments, rare but real, when their presence feels almost gentle. A guard might steady you with a hand at your elbow when you stumble on the stairs, or hand you a cup of water before sending you back into a room. But even then, the weight of their role never leaves. They are not friends. They are not family. They are the boundary between you and the world outside, and between you and what the mistress will not allow inside. Late at night, when the last client has gone and the curtains hang still, the guards are the ones who make the rounds. They check the locks, the shutters, the bolts on the storage chests. They walk the hall in slow, measured steps, listening for anything out of place, a creak, a cough, a voice where none should be. Only when they are satisfied does the mistress close her ledger for the night. And in the morning, before the first knock on the door, they are already there again. Boots on the floorboards, eyes on the door, ready to start the count all over. In this house, the guards are as permanent as the smell of tallow in the curtains. You may grow used to them, but you will never forget they are there. Not every man who steps through the door goes straight upstairs. Some linger in the common room, letting the warmth from the hearth seep into their bones before they decide. The mistress knows this, and the house is prepared for it. The tables are pushed close to the walls, their surfaces worn smooth from years of elbows and mugs sliding back and forth. In the center there is space for movement, a place where a woman might lean against a chair, toss a pair of dice, or sway gently to the tune of a song half remembered. The air here is different from the rooms above. It carries the smell of ale and roasted meat from the kitchen, layered over the ever-present tallow and smoke. The light is softer, coming from the low fire and the candles set in clay holders along the walls. Shadows move easily here, curling over the faces of those who sit at the tables, making the line between stranger and friend blur. Some women are better at the games than others. A quick hand with dice can earn a man's attention faster than a smile. They play with an easy laugh, the sound carrying just far enough to draw eyes from across the room. Cards appear too, thick, stiff things painted with crude figures, the edges blackened from the oils of many hands. A game might last minutes or stretch until the candles need trimming. Others choose song. Not the loud, drunken chants heard in the street, but softer tunes, the kind meant to pull a man closer to hear the next verse. The voice might not be trained, but it doesn't need to be. It needs only to be warm enough to fill the space between two mugs, steady enough to follow the rhythm of the fire's crackle. Ale flows easily here. Mugs are filled and refilled from a barrel set near the hearth, the froth clinging to the rims before dripping onto the table. A woman might pour it herself, leaning close enough for her hair to brush a shoulder, or she might pass the mug with a look that promises more if the night continues. There is food, though less for eating than for keeping hands busy, bowls of salted nuts, pieces of bread torn and passed, dried fruit when the season allows. The taste matters less than the act of sharing it, breaking off a piece and holding it out for someone else to take. The guard at the door watches without interfering, his gaze moving from table to table. He knows that this, too, is part of the business. Every laugh, every shared drink, every game played is another step toward the stairs. Sometimes, the entertainment is quieter still. A man might sit with a woman, talking in low tones about the ship he came in on, the goods he carries, the troubles waiting for him in the next port. She listens, nods, asks just enough questions to keep the words coming. The minutes here are not counted as strictly as those upstairs, but they still have value. The mistress is watching from her place in the corner, her eyes sharp even when her hands are busy with her cup. And then, when the time is right, when the game is done, the song ended, the mug emptied, a hand is offered, a chair pushed back, and the walk to the stairs begins. The common room exhales, one less body at the table, one more set of footsteps on the boards above. But the room never empties completely. There is always someone waiting, always another pair of dice ready to roll, another song to be started, another mug to be filled. The business upstairs may be measured in minutes, but down here it is measured in the slow, steady pull of the evening, one glance, one laugh, one shared drink at a time. Not every woman in the house chose to be here. Some were bought the way you buy a horse, inspected for health, for strength, for how they might look in the dim light of a tallow candle. Others arrived in chains, fresh from the ships that brought more than furs and ale to the docks. You can tell them apart from the free women, though not always at first glance. The difference is in the small things. A slave's clothing is often simpler, coarser, with the stitching done in haste. Their rooms, if they can be called that, are closer to the back stairs, away from the windows. The curtain at their door is thinner, sometimes little more than a length of sackcloth. They owe no rent to the mistress because they are not paid. Their time is not their own to buy back. Every coin handed over for their minutes goes directly into the mistress's purse, and every request for rest or relief is weighed against her profit. Some came from far-off coasts, their words carrying the rhythm of another language. Over time, those rhythms fade. The house speaks in one tongue, and it becomes the only one heard. But traces remain, an accent on certain words, a different way of pronouncing a name, a song hummed under the breath when the room is empty. The work is the same for them, but the hours are longer. A free woman might refuse a client if she knows him to be rough or stingy. A slave has no such choice. They are sent where the mistress decides, to whoever has silver, or something to trade, in hand. Sometimes, a client will ask outright for a slave, thinking the novelty worth paying for. The mistress names a higher price, and the coin is weighed without comment. There are no discounts for their discomfort. Yet not all is open cruelty. There are nights when the slaves and free women share bread at the same table, laugh at the same stories, warm themselves at the same fire. But there is always the knowledge that one can walk away, if she saves enough, if she chooses, and the other cannot. A few slaves do earn their freedom, though the road to it is long. It means years of service, favors done for the mistress, coins hidden away in secret, perhaps help from someone outside the house. Even then, the price set for their freedom is steep, often more than they could have stolen in a lifetime. You see it in their eyes when the guard opens the door to let in the night's first customer. For the free, it is another transaction. For the enslaved, it is another reminder. Time is not something they sell, it is something already taken from them. And yet, in the quiet moments, when the rooms are empty and the fire burns low, the line between slave and free blurs. Fatigue makes all bodies heavy in the same way, hunger makes all hands reach for the same loaf, and the smell of the house settles on every skin alike. The mistress does not call them slaves. She says they are owned by the house. It sounds cleaner, easier to forget. But the truth remains, written in the way they move, in the way they look toward the door, not with hope, but with calculation, measuring not how far they could get, but how long before they would be brought back. It never begins loudly. Illness here creeps in on soft feet, a cough muffled into a sleeve, a fever that feels like nothing more than a restless night. In the common room, voices carry on as usual, mugs are filled, dice roll across the table. But upstairs, the air feels different. Too still, too warm. In a place like this, sickness moves quickly. The curtains meant to give privacy are thin enough for voices to pass through. They carry breath just as easily. One woman's cough becomes 2 by morning, 3 by nightfall. The smell of the house shifts. Beneath the tallow and ale is the sour, damp scent of sweat left to dry on skin that never cools. The mistress watches closely but says little. She knows the signs. When too many fall ill, the coins slow, the rooms go quiet. But she cannot afford to close the house. Instead, she calls for vinegar. Bowls of it are set by the doors, rags soaked and dragged across the floor until the boards shine wet. The sharp scent stings the nose, but it is meant to cut through whatever lingers in the air. The midwife is called, though she is not here for births this time. She brings bundles of dried herbs, thyme, sage, sometimes juniper, and burns them in shallow bowls. The smoke curls up toward the rafters, carrying a bitter edge that sits heavy in the chest. She does not promise it will cure anything. She says only that it might keep the sickness from getting worse. Some clients stay away when word spreads. Others come still, saying they have survived worse on the ships. They drink more, speak louder, as though noise could protect them. The guard does not turn them away. Silver is silver, no matter whose hands bring it. The worst nights are the quiet ones. A curtain is drawn and does not open again until morning. Footsteps pass in the hall without pausing. The sound of someone breathing, harsh, uneven, becomes a clock no one wants to hear. When it stops, the house seems to hold its own breath. Death is not dramatic here. There is no wailing, no parade of mourners. A body is wrapped quickly in linen, carried out through the back door before the day's business begins. Sometimes the clothes are burned, sometimes washed and folded for the next to wear. The bed is stripped, the ropes tightened, the curtain replaced. By evening, the room is ready again. The ones who survive return to work as soon as they can stand. Their coughs linger, their hands still tremble when they pour ale, but the debt does not wait. And in time, the sickness is remembered less for who it took than for how it slowed the house, the quiet weeks, the empty chairs, the smell of vinegar and herbs in the air. Even months later, a sudden silence in the hall can make you remember. The scrape of a chair, the pause between two breaths, the way a curtain moves with no sound of footsteps behind it. The house forgets quickly, because it must. But you do not. Ale is as much a part of the house as the stairs or the curtains. It warms the men from the inside, loosens their voices, makes the silver leave their hands faster. But it also has teeth. The first signs are subtle. A laugh that lasts too long, the scrape of a chair dragged back too quickly, a mug set down harder than it needs to be. The mistress notices, though she pretends not to. The guards notice too, shifting their weight, eyes following the hands that start to wander too far from the table. Most nights, the drink stays in its place. Men leave flushed and louder than when they came in, but with their silver spent and their tempers cooled. Other nights, it tips over into something else. The ale is not cold here, never is, and it sits heavy in the stomach. It sharpens some men, dulls others. Either way, it makes their movements slower to stop once they start. It begins in the common room more often than upstairs. Two men arguing over a game of dice, the coins on the table claimed by both. Or a man refusing to give up his seat near the fire. Sometimes it is about a woman, her smile offered to one and not the other. The reasons don't matter. What matters is the moment when the words stop and the hands start. The guards move fast when it happens. A fist is caught in mid-swing, an arm twisted until it drops whatever weapon it meant to raise. Most men don't carry blades inside. The mistress's rules see to that. But a tankard swung hard enough can split skin, and a boot can bruise worse than a club. Upstairs, the trouble is quieter but no less dangerous. A drunk who ignores the sound of the guard's throat clearing outside the curtain. one who grabs too tightly, forgetting, or not caring, that minutes are not the same as ownership. A free woman might shout for the guard. A slave cannot, but she can try to twist away, to buy herself enough time for someone to notice. The mistress's patience is short on such nights. A man who crosses the line is out the door before his second protest. Sometimes he leaves limping. Sometimes the sound of his boots fades into the street without another word. The house cannot afford to let violence settle in. It drives away coin faster than any sickness. But it lingers all the same. A bruise hidden under a sleeve. A cracked mug pushed to the back of the shelf. The way voices stay lower for the rest of the night, the laughter shorter, more careful. Some women take precautions. A small knife tucked under the blanket, sharp enough for a warning but not to kill. A heavy mug kept within reach. Most rely on the guards, though the guards themselves can be as unpredictable as the men they watch. By morning, the smell of ale in the air has gone stale, flattened into something sour. The tables are wiped, the broken things swept away, and the night is spoken of only if the damage is too big to ignore. Violence here is not a story to tell, it is a thing to move past quickly, before it can grow teeth again. And when evening comes, the mugs will be filled as they always are, the dice will roll, the songs will start, as though nothing dangerous ever happened at all. The house is not silent in the day, but the sounds are softer, as though wrapped in cloth. The heavy door stays closed, the street noise seeps in only as a faint murmur. Curtains hang still. The candles are stubs from the night before, their wax cooled into crooked shapes. Morning here is not sunrise but the moment the last man leaves. The guards close the bolts, the mistress counts the coin, and the women drift away to their rooms. Some collapse onto the bed without undressing, pulling the blanket up over their head to shut out the faint light. Others sit at the table, eating what's left from the night, bread gone tougher, ale gone flat. Sleep comes in pieces. A knock in the hallway, footsteps on the stairs, the scrape of a chair from the common room below, each one pulls you up just far enough to know you were dreaming. The air is different in the day, cooler and heavier, as if it's settling into the walls after the heat of the night. The house is busy in its own way. Clothes are mended by the window, needles moving in slow, steady stitches. Sheets are shaken out in the backyard, hung over the line to catch what little sun the season allows. The smell of vinegar and wood smoke drifts through the rooms, chasing away, though never fully, the sense of the night. There is talk, though less than after dark. Words are traded while sweeping the floors, while rinsing mugs, while braiding hair. Some laugh softly over private jokes, others speak in low tones about a client, about the mistress, about a plan to leave when enough coin has been hidden away. The conversations rise and fall like the creak of the house itself. The mistress moves through these hours without the sharpness she wears at night. She checks the linens, the pantry, the locks. She speaks less, watches more. It is in these hours that she makes her quiet calculations. Which rooms need repair, which debts are overdue, which women are growing restless. By afternoon, the house begins to change again. Curtains are straightened, candles replaced, the fire stoked higher. Bread is cut, mugs are set out, the tables wiped clean of dust. The guards return to their places, boots echoing against the boards. Outside, the street grows louder. The market winds down, the dockworkers' voices carry over the roofs. The smell of cooking fires drifts in. Inside, the air thickens with readiness. For a moment, just before the first knock, the house holds still. The rooms are in order, the women dressed, the mistress in her chair, the guards in their places. The day folds in on itself, making way for the night to begin again. Life between nights is a pause, not long enough to rest, but long enough to remember there is a world outside the curtains. In the stillness between nights, the house becomes its own small village. The women live closer to each other than most families, sharing walls, blankets, meals, and sometimes grudges. Friendships here are made of small things. A loaf of bread quietly split in two when the mistress isn't looking. A stitch done on someone else's dress while she sleeps. A seat left empty near the fire, waiting for the one who always takes it. There are women who braid each other's hair before the first knock of the night, fingers moving gently, the work done in silence. Others keep a pot of tea near their bed, pouring without being asked when they hear a cough in the next room. The bonds are real, but they are not simple. A friend today might be a rival tomorrow. Competition is quiet but constant. There are better rooms, better paying clients, better hours to work, and the mistress's favor, which is worth more than silver in the long run. Sometimes the rivalries are sharp. A woman might slip into a room first, knowing another had been promised that client. Or she might speak too loudly about someone's sickness, letting the mistress hear. The punishments for such things are rarely official, but they echo: an empty seat at the fire, a shared loaf not offered, a braid pulled tighter than it needs to be. The guards see these shifts but say nothing. The mistress notices too, though she rarely interferes unless it costs her coin. She knows that too much harmony breeds softness, and softness does not earn. Yet on certain nights, the lines blur again. When trouble comes to the door, rivals stand side by side. When sickness moves through the house, a blanket is shared without a word. In the moments after a bad client leaves, it is often the rival who brings the cup of water, who sits for a moment on the edge of the bed without speaking. Friendship here is not the same as in the world beyond the curtains. It is quieter, more fragile, made up of looks and gestures instead of promises. Rivalry is not open hatred. It is the knowledge that in this place, survival is personal, and kindness is often a kind of debt. In the common room, laughter can mean true joy or a well-aimed barb. A compliment can be both genuine and strategic. Every relationship in the house carries weight, and every woman knows it. Still, when the fire burns low and the night drags on, it is easier to sit close to someone you trust, even halfway, than to face the dark alone. And in those moments, even the sharpest rival can feel like a friend. When a woman leaves the house, it happens quietly. There is no farewell gathering, no raised mugs in her honor. Her belongings, few enough to fit into a bundle, are tied with string, lifted in one hand. If she owns more than that, it is usually because she has been here too long. Some go in the early morning, before the first market voices reach the street. The guard at the door opens it without comment, and the cold air rushes in around her ankles. The mistress watches from her chair, her eyes sharp but unreadable. If the debts are paid, she says nothing. If they are not, she says even less. Leaving can mean many things. For some, it is freedom bought with years of careful saving, coins hidden under floorboards, favors called in, a promise of work elsewhere. For others, it is an escape taken in the thin hours of dawn, knowing the debt will follow but choosing distance over safety. A few leave with the blessing of the mistress, though this is rare. Those are the ones who have proven useful, who might return later with information, with goods, with something worth the favor granted. The women who leave with savings carry themselves differently. Their eyes stay forward, their hands tight around the bundle they take. They step into the street as if it might hold its shape for them. But the city is not gentle, and silver disappears faster out there than it does here. You hear the stories. A woman who left in spring, dressed in her best, was seen that winter working in another house 2 streets over. Another made it as far as the next port before her coin was gone, and her name forgotten. She came back thinner, quieter, and went straight to the mistress without looking at anyone else. Some return with nothing but the clothes they wear. Their rooms are not waiting for them. The curtains have new hands to hold them open. They take what they are given, a smaller space, harder work, the slow climb back into the mistress's favor. There are also those who vanish entirely. No one knows if they found something better, or if they were swallowed by the city's darker corners. Their absence is felt for a week, maybe two, and then the rhythm of the house fills the space they left. For the ones still inside, each departure is a reminder. It is possible to leave. It is also possible to come back. The line between the two is thinner than it looks, and the door swings both ways. At night, when the street outside is full of voices and the curtains glow with candlelight, you sometimes think of the women who walked away. You wonder where they sleep now, whether the air smells of tallow and ale where they are, whether they still wake at the sound of boots in the hall. The house forgets quickly, because it must. But you do not. The house trades in more than silver and flesh. It trades in words. The kind spoken too loudly after a third mug of ale, the kind whispered into a woman's hair when the guard's footsteps are far away. Merchants come here after the market closes, their purses heavy, their tongues loosened. They speak of shipments delayed by storms, of which captains pay on time and which ones don't. Sailors bring the sea with them, the salt in their hair, the reek of fish on their hands, and stories from every port they've seen. Some tell them for the pleasure of hearing their own voices. Others let things slip without meaning to, their thoughts half on the woman beside them and half on the coin they've already spent. Soldiers are the loudest. They brag about raids, about who commands them and what orders are coming next. They speak of shortages, of which villages will be stripped bare, of which roads are safe to travel and which are not. Sometimes they say too much, forgetting that the walls here are thin and the ears many. The women remember more than they let on. A name mentioned in passing, a place spoken of as if it were nothing, a detail dropped between kisses, all of it is stored away. Some of it is repeated to the mistress, who knows when information is worth more than coin. She passes it along carefully, to the right buyer, at the right time. The guards hear things too. They stand close enough to the door to catch fragments of every conversation in the hall. They do not ask questions, but they remember. A man who speaks of needing to leave quickly is watched more closely. One who mentions carrying goods through a certain gate might find the mistress knows about it before morning. News travels faster here than in the market. By the time the sun rises, the house might already know which ship docked, which merchant's stock was stolen, which man was found dead in the alley behind the tavern. And by the next night, that news will have passed through 10 more mouths, changing shape each time. Sometimes, the information is used to protect. A woman might tell another not to take a certain client because of something she overheard. Other times, it is used as leverage. The mistress might lower her voice and remind a man that she knows where his goods are stored, and how poorly they are guarded. To outsiders, the house looks like any other, a place for warmth, for drink, for bodies. But inside, it is also a map of the city's secrets, drawn in whispers and glances, in the way someone lingers too long at a table or leaves too quickly through the back door. And when the doors close in the small hours of morning, the words remain, hanging in the air like smoke, waiting for the next night to carry them further. By the time the lamps are lit, the day has already been washed away. The rain helps when it comes, sweeping the dirt from the cobbles, carrying the last traces of the market into the gutters. Even without rain, the city has its own way of erasing. The house changes with the light. Curtains are straightened, the floor swept again, and the red cloth is hung over the door. It flutters in the evening breeze like a signal no one needs explained. Whatever happened inside the night before, the raised voices, the bruises, the quiet births, the deaths, is sealed away the moment that cloth is tied. Outside, the street hums with its own business. Merchants argue over cart space, children chase each other between stalls, The smell of roasting meat drifts from a vendor who's been on the corner longer than anyone remembers. A stranger passing by might glance at the door, at the guard standing there with his arms crossed, but only for a moment. Their attention slides away, drawn to the next sound, the next light, the next voice calling out a price. The city does not keep your secrets out of kindness. It forgets because it must. Too many doors, too many nights, too many stories to hold them all. The man who left here drunk and angry will wake tomorrow in another part of town, his memory blurred. The woman who slipped out at dawn will vanish into the market crowd by midday. Even those who live across the street will turn their eyes elsewhere when the red cloth moves. Inside, the rooms are ready again. The fire is steady, the mugs clean, the women dressed in colors meant to catch the candlelight. The mistress sits in her chair, ledger open, pen ready. The guards take their places, one inside, one out. The first knock comes, and the day is gone. There is only the night now, its smells, its sounds, its minutes bought and sold. The street outside moves on, the way it always does, the way it always will. And tomorrow night the cloth will hang again, the lamps will burn, and the city will forget all over.